Hello, and welcome to Boo! Yeah, that's what I thought. Coward. You scared? You should be. These are some big boys, some scary boys. Uh, a lot of actually boys writing, because if there's one thing that men love, overindulging themselves. But now that you're in the right mind frame, deep, shuddering fear, we can go through these enormous books that send chills down my spine, that shiver my timbers, that fill me with nothing but dread. Alas, I want to read each and every single one of them. Now, is this a call to myself to read these in the near future? Is this a call to encourage you to write in the comments what you think I should read, or if I should make a buddy read for any of these in the Discord? I dare say I can't confirm that, because it depends on the day. In the bright light of day, I may say I'll read one of these, but when push comes to shove and darkness falls and I'm cornered by it, it could never happen. So I have 13 books here, an unlucky number for an unlucky time, and I'm just going to go through these off rip at random. I just went through all my bookshelves and just plucked ones off. I will give a kind of clarification here. Almost all of these are classics or like lit fic or something. There's only one fantasy book on here because I typically find time to read fantasy books. I prioritize fantasy books because they're longer, and I read shorter books alongside it, which is why these books terrify me so much, because I know that I am committing at least 2 weeks, probably closer to a month for each and every single one of these books. So let's go. We're starting with, I think people would probably expect it to appear on a book of fucking terrifying nonsense. House of Leaves, which I just saw funny, moving, and sexy. Thank you very much, New York Times book review. By Mark Z. Danielewski. Now, of course, this is the remastered full color edition, like it's a fucking 1970s psychedelic rock album being remastered in the 2000s. I'm going to show you this right here, okay? We're looking at prime nonsense. There's no description of it on the back, but oh, here we go. Let me read you the synopsis. Years ago, when House of Leaves was first being passed around, it was nothing more than a badly bundled heap of paper, parts of which would occasionally surface on the internet. Now, this is absolutely, is this to do with the book, or is this to do with the book? No one could have anticipated the small but devoted following this terrifying story would soon command, starting with odd assortments of marginalised youth, musicians, tattoo artists, programmers, strippers, environmentalists, and adrenaline junkies. The book eventually made its way into the hands of older generations, who not only found themselves in those strangely arranged pages, but also discovered a way back into the lives of their estranged children. Now, for the first time, this astonishing novel is made available in book form, complete with the original coloured words, vertical footnotes, and newly added second and third appendices. The story remains unchanged, focusing on a young family that moves into a small home on Ash Tree Lane, where they discover something terribly wrong. Their house is bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. So yes, the fame of this book comes from the way that it is crafted, the way that the narrative is constructed. It's full of mixed media, random changes in format, pictures, plays, interviews. It's a Marmite book. You either love it or you hate it. And alongside that, it's a book that requires a lot of attention and thought. Two things I struggle with. But eventually I would love to tackle House of Leaves. I think that would be one that would be fascinating to do in a larger forum. That's book one. Book two, to wind it the other way, is East of Eden by John Steinbeck. I have loved the Steinbeck I've read, which is Only of Mice and Men. But I've read Of Mice and Men twice. And I love the way that he writes. I love how economical he is with it. I really adored his writing, actually, when I read Of Mice and Men. One time for school and one time for myself. And East of Eden is a longer book by far. I think it's 700 pages in this format. But I've heard people say that it's a really readable book. So that this is one where the pure page number rather than the reading experience makes me nervous. California's fertile Salinas Valley is home to two families whose destinies are fruitfully and fatally intertwined. Over the generations, between the beginning of the 20th century and the end of the First World War, the Trasks and the Hamiltons will helplessly replay the fall of Adam and Eve and the murderous rivalry of Cain and Abel. So, if there's two things I love, one, it's an allegory, personally, and two, anything around the First World War. So I actually think that I will love this book. I think it's destined. I think it's one of the reasons I put it off is that I think this will become an all-time favourite. And so it's one of those things where I'm like, it's not going anywhere. You know? But maybe I should. Next, the nerd in me. Actually, I suppose this is a fantasy. My apologies. Ivanhoe by Sir Walter Scott. When I was a kid, I was obsessed with Robin Hood. I wrote a short story when I was around 6 years old that was a Robin Hood story that my mum talks about, where the teacher said she was worried about me because I had Robin Hood murder Maid Marian by accident and then commit suicide. So I've watched Robin Hood, I've watched Prince of Thieves, I've seen fucking all, like, a bunch of the BBC one when I was a kid. I loved that when I was a kid. And so this is The Heroic Adventures of Sir Wilfrid make Ivanhoe perhaps Scott's most unforgettable work. The fiery rescue of Sir Wilfrid of Ivanhoe and his fellow captives from Knight Templar's castle by Robin Hood. The wounded Ivanhoe's trial by combat with the powerful knight to save the lovely Jewess Rebecca from the stake. It's all to do with the Crusades. It's all to do with that era. Robin Hood, we love to see it. I really want to read it. The stirring drama of Ivanhoe set against a shimmering backdrop of chivalry, Norman-Saxon conflict, and medieval pageantry established Sir Walter Scott as the originator of the historical novel. This is around like 500 pages and also was like a 19th century text, so it's going to be dry. So that's mainly it. It's not so much, once again, I actually have no idea what the reading experience. I haven't seen anyone talk about Ivanhoe on the internet personally, but it's one I want to read. And I actually really like this cover with them riding. It's a real nice little cute fella, and it only costs $8, like Canadian. That's practically free. Then next up are ones that I think would be anticipated in any list like this. Now, this author has two that are monsters that frighten me wholeheartedly, and is an author I have read before. That is Leo Tolstoy with War and Peace or Anna Karenina. The reason I chose War and Peace is because this edition is just larger, looks more intimidating. So I picked that out. But really, I could go either way. I read The Death of Ivan Ilyich last year by him, and I adored it. I gave it 5 stars. I thought the writing was incredible. I thought the story was fantastic. So I do desperately want to read more Tolstoy. And the thing that terrifies me, and this goes on to the next author as well, Russian naming conventions, I struggle to wrap my fucking head around. I really struggle with it. I apologise, but that is something that I still need to adjust to. But the only way I'm going to do that is by reading more Russian literature. So I just need to buck up. I mean, Tolstoy is just one of those classic authors that I'm glad that I have read something by him, but I feel like I need to get through one of his more meatier projects rather than a little 60-page short story. So I'm not going to tell you what War and Peace is about. It's about fucking everything. It's essentially about Napoleon's invasion of Russia. And just a bunch of stuff in regards to that. I don't really know anything more than that. Crime and Punishment, need I say more? I really want to read Crime and Punishment. About 550 pages. One of the world's great novels, Crime and Punishment is the story of a murderer and its consequences, an unparalleled tale of suspense set in the midst of 19th century Russia's troubled transition to the modern age. Crime and Punishment is one of the most iconic books ever written. I actually just recently saw that it was one of David Lynch's 5 favourite books, and I don't think a human being needs more of a recommendation than that. Once again, I read White Nights by Dostoevsky in a kind of experiment I was doing to see who I wanted to read. And I did prefer the short story by Tolstoy to the one by Dostoevsky, but really enjoyed both. I want to get to both. I also have Notes from the Underground, but that's not a big scary boy. At this one, we only have one book by this author. I have owned a lot of his books previously by taking them from my family members' houses. But I've only read one book by this person as well, and I've picked out the one book that we have, obviously, but this extends to pretty much their entire catalogue for a very particular reason, and that is Charles Dickens. We have particularly great expectations. Grace tried to read it at one point, maybe, I think like 8 years ago, and she couldn't do it. This applies to Bleak House, to Oliver Twist, to any of this motherfucker's books, and that is, he was paid by the word, and as a result, his books are stretched, let's put it nicely, like too little butter over too much toast, or whatever Bilbo Baggins says. This is about Pip. Pip's poor. Pip doesn't want to be poor and wants to get out. That's what Great Expectations is about. It's a nice rhyme. I do want to read a Charles Dickens book. I've read A Christmas Carol a couple of times. I've loved it my entire life, from Muppets Christmas Carol to actually reading the text a few times at Christmas over the last few years. One of his larger works, I just feel like I need to read them to say that I have. So Charles Dickens is one that when I stir up the coach. I also, now I'm going to caveat this by saying I don't know much, but from the stuff I know about Charles Dickens, seemed like a cool dude. Like, he had a magazine where he would regularly have female writers contribute and stuff, and he seemed very supportive of the creative arts for other people as well, making a career from it, which you have to respect. You know, put some respect on his name. Now, if you leave a comment telling me he's a piece of shit and listing reasons why, I will delete that section and be like, this guy's the worst, and I'll pretend I always knew it. But, you know, give me a heads up first. Now, the next two, the next 3 I bought this year. So within this month, I've purchased these 3 books, and I want to read them all. Now, will I? Who knows? But the first one is The Divine Comedy by Dante. I really want to read The Divine Comedy. My brother had a copy of Inferno when I was a kid, and I was always obsessed with the cover. I never read it, obviously, but I was just, from an early age, I thought it was such a beautiful book. And I just, I find myself drawn back to it, even though I've never read it. This is a comedy. This is the full Divine Comedy. So it's got all 3: Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso. Is that how you pronounce it? I don't give a shit. And yes, this is essentially the journey through the circles of hell. I mean, it's Dante's Inferno. We know what it's about. One of the classic pieces of literature, a text written in the 1300s, possibly 1400s, I don't remember which, but crazy that firstly it survived, secondly it's still talked about now, etc., and is a vital piece of literature. Travelling forward a few hundred years, but still a very old text, obviously, is Paradise Lost by John Milton. Another book. When I was a kid, my brother had to read this for school, and I was probably only about 9 years old, and I just remember him talking about Paradise Lost and reading scenes out and explaining it, and I just was riveted by the concept, because whilst I am not religious, I am obsessed with religious iconography, and like not just Christianity, but all different religions. And it is something I want to do, is read books that are specifically around religious texts, or religious texts themselves. Something I would like to do moving forward. Now, specifically, I'm interested in reading Paradise Lost and The Divine Comedy, because they both have representations of the devil that are extremely iconic, and I think have a massive influence on the representation of evil in general and the different perspectives, the different ways it's been done. Like, I'm looking at Dracula right now, and I'm pretty positive that Dracula has influence from both of these in the representation of the devil throughout that. Now, and R.F. Kuang has Catabasis, I don't remember how it's pronounced, but it has that coming out, and also a journey into hell. So I feel like the text will come in handy in exploring that text as well, for the intertextual references. Next up is it was a book that was on I think it was the Times, New York Times top 100 books of the 21st century, I think it was, and that's 2666 by Roberto Bolano. I've seen after that reviews that had me extremely interested. This feels like it's meant to be a very dense, very disjointed, but comes together in a kind of thematic conclusion. Deals with some things that I think are extremely important. I know femicide is extremely important in this book. The topic of femicide is something that is underreported, underspoken about, and so reading text surrounding that, including a book that is as lauded as this, I think is important. It says, 3 academics on the trail of a reclusive German author, a New York reporter on his first Mexican assignment, a widowed philosopher, a police detective in love with an elusive older woman. These are among the searchers drawn to the border city of Santa Teresa, where, over the course of a decade, hundreds of women have disappeared. I'm extremely intrigued by this. Once again, though, a monster. Both the length at 900 pages and also the content itself that scares me. So this has a dual threat to me in terms of making me terrified to read it. I dare say I don't even need to say why this one scares me. I just have to show you that spine. That is a monster. Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell is... I loved Piranesi. Fantastic book. And Susanna Clarke can clearly only write 2 spectrums, just opposite sides of the spectrum. Either the shortest little fella you've ever seen, or a doorstop. This is, as I said, was the only fantasy on the list, particularly centuries ago when magic still existed in England. The greatest magician of all was the Raven King, a human child brought up by fairies. Weren't we all? Now, at the beginning of the 19th century, he's barely more than a legend, and England, with its mad king and its dashing poets, no longer believes in practical magic. Then, the reclusive Mr. Norrell of Hertford Abbey appears, and news spreads of the return of magic to England. Persuaded that he must help the government in the war against Napoleon, Mr. Norrell goes to London, where he meets a brilliant young magician, Jonathan Strange. Together, they dazzle the country with their feats, but the partnership soon turns to rivalry. I didn't even know that. I don't know the plot of this shit, evidently. I'm going to stop right there. I don't want to spoil any more. 780 pages in this edition that's a bigger boy. So I think you can understand why that terrifies me. Next up terrifies me once again twofold, and is an author I have read from before. That is Kafka on the Shore by Murakami. I have read Wind Up Bird Chronicle. Probably it will be 4 years this year ago. And I loved Wind Up Bird Chronicle. I gave it 4.5 stars. At the time, it was an extremely... it's one of those books that altered my perception of art. It altered my appreciation. And it really connected, not all of it, but some of it really connected to how I felt at the time, based on my experiences. Firstly, the length scares me. It's 500 pages long. And Murakami's magical realism is quite an intense experience in the reading position. Secondly, it deals with very rough content from what I've heard. I've seen a lot of people say that they can't get through it, they can't read it. So that has me nervous. I know there's sexual content, I think, as well, that's very off-putting. That's number 2. 3 is my experience of Wind Up Bird Chronicle and Murakami in general. His perception of women, his writing of women, does just make me nauseous. And I didn't enjoy reading parts of Wind Up Bird Chronicle, even though I loved it, because of... It would have been a 5-star, possibly the best book I've ever read, if he didn't write about women the way he did. So, something about that has made me not read a Murakami book since First Person Singular, and that was also probably 4 years ago now. However, Kafka on the Shore, the things I've heard said about it do fascinate me. I do want to read this book. It sounds incredibly interesting. Oh, I should read the back. Kafka Tamura runs away from home at 15, under the shadow of his father's dark prophecy. The aging Nakata, a tracker of lost cats who never recovered from a bizarre childhood affliction, finds his pleasantly simplified life suddenly turned upside down. As their parallel odysseys unravel, cats converse with people, fish tumble from the sky, a ghost-like pimp deploys a Hegel-spouting girl of the night, a forest harbours soldiers apparently unaged since World War II. There is a savage killing, but the identity of both victim and killer is a riddle, one of many which combine to create an elegant and dreamlike masterpiece. It just sounds fucking riveting, honestly. Like, each of these, when I read the back and I'm like, I want to read that so badly. And then I remember that the book is fucking 700 pages long and I just sneak it back on the shelf. Is The Stand by Stephen King. Jesus, I was fucking jump scared by him. My God. This is over 1,000 pages long. The Stand is essentially, I think, a post, plague virus destroying the world and society kind of world. We follow a small town. I think it's a town, and we just follow what happens there. It's a classic Stephen King book. You read it for the characters and the introspection and the horror and the creepiness and everything. I have not read a Stephen King book probably in 3-4 years because I read all the shorter ones that I was really looking to, like Pet Sematary and Misery and The Shining and stuff. So now I feel like the next one I have to read will be The Stand or It. And it's been years of me putting that motherfucker off. Who knows? And finally, a book that I have been recommended personally. People think I'll really enjoy it. I don't know what it says about me or them or whatever. Just under 900 pages long. It is Perdido Street Station. A sci-fi, apparently politically charged from my understanding. Hyper-political, very radical. That is my understanding. Sci-fi. And it is the metropolis of New Crobozon. Sprawls at the centre of the world. Humans and mutants and arcane races brood in the gloom beneath its chimneys, where the river is sluggish from a natural effluent, and factories and foundries pound into the night. For more than 1,000 years, the Parliament and its brutal militia have ruled here over a vast economy of workers and artists, spies and soldiers, magicians, junkies and whores. Now, a stranger has arrived with a pocket full of gold and an impossible demand, and, inadvertently, clumsily, something unthinkable is released. As the city becomes gripped by an alien terror, the fate of millions lies with the clutches of renegades and outcasts on the run from lawmakers and crime lords alike. The urban nightscape becomes a hunting ground. Battles rage in the shadows of uncanny architecture, and a reckoning is due at the city's heart under the vast, chaotic vaults of Perdido Street Station. I got this for free. I don't remember where from. It could have been the book box. It could have been from a little library, but I got it from somewhere. I think it was the book box. And yeah, people have recommended me it for a long time. I do want to read it, but scares me from a length, and also I also think that this is a highly divisive book, and sometimes a short book that's divisive is extremely. I just want to get into it. I want to know what I think. When it's a long book, I'm like, do I want to go through that to know if I like it? Do I care which side I'm on? Or is the journey not worth it in terms of if it ends up being dog shit and I don't like it? I've just wasted so much time. That's the trouble I find. Nevertheless, that is my full list. So I'm going to put together the stack for the thumbnail picture. But before that, thank you very much for watching. I hope you did enjoy. Please let me know, out of those that I've listed, which would you be interested in hearing me talk about? Which would you be interested in taking part in, like a book club type thing about it? If you're in the Discord, if you're not in the Discord, let me know, because whichever one, I may do it at some point this year. Hopefully, now that I'm coming to an end of a lot of big series, I can get through some of these big boys. Let me know what big books terrify you. What's sat on your shelves, hulking there? You know, it's not like a little shadow that's hiding in the corner. This is a fucking big brute that's just stood there in the corner like, fucking hell. Let me know which one of those is in your room doing that to you. Otherwise, I dare say, Good job, everyone. And I hope you have a nice rest of your day.